Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast. My name is Jay, and I'm joined, as always, by Tyrone. Tyrone, my friend, how are you?
Oh, tired, the usual. But other than that, I'm doing well. It's a lovely Friday evening here, so I can't complain.
Yeah, it most certainly is. I completely agree with that. I had a chance to finish up my workday and even had a little shot of Grey Goose to get the night started. So I'm excited about tonight's topic. For those of you that don't know, we did a poll on our Twitter account, and we were able to actually get it down to a hard tie between WrestleMania 2000 and WrestleMania 9. And so we decided to do a little flip of the coin here on our end, and WrestleMania 2001 out. So we are covering that this week, and Tyrone is rebooking. How did you feel about this one, my friend?
This is a terrible card. It's a two-match card. I think we all know the two matches that I'm talking about. I don't want to get into it just because they may have stayed the same. But overall, this was a shitty WrestleMania.
Yeah, it was not. It's probably my least favorite Mania ever, actually. It was just littered with tag team matches, and I think there was only one singles match, and that was with the Cat and Terry Runnels, which is unfortunate. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you've come up with this week and hearing what we've decided to rebook. So with that being said, I do want to quickly give a shout out to all of those folks listening right now. It is the Monday after Mania. We are recording on Friday before Mania. So it's WrestleMania weekend. We are super excited. I know I am anyways. It's been kind of really busy all week for both of us. So I think that the excitement of the weekend hasn't quite sunk in for me yet. But you know what? I can't think of a better way to get Mania weekend started than sitting around having a couple of cold ones with my good buddy and just shooting the breeze about wrestling and getting right into that headspace.
Have you watched any of the events yet from this week? The Hall of Fame and both NXT nights?
I haven't had an opportunity as of yet. I'm very much looking forward to it. As I said, side note for those folks that are listening, I also moonlight as an actor. So I had a couple of auditions I had to work on this week and learn some dialogue and things of that nature. So I just haven't had an opportunity to really sink my teeth into Mania week like I traditionally do. But I'll definitely be watching in hindsight. I'm going to be watching both nights live. And I believe that you're going to be watching some of it live. So we'll definitely be corresponding, and I have heard nothing but good things about NXT thus far. What are you? I believe you've watched some of it. What are your thoughts?
I watched the Hall of Fame, and I thought the Hall of Fame was, first of all, weird. I don't understand why they didn't have the current roster in an audience setting at all. Like, there was no audience whatsoever. I'm not going to lie, though. I really appreciated the fact that speeches were kept to 5 minutes max. It made the night flow by. I'm sure we could have heard some road stories, but I don't need to hear the same stories being told 20 times. I know when you watch it, you're probably going to be a little bit upset at the shortness of a couple of the speeches, but it was fine. And I watched NXT Night 2. I have not watched Night 1 yet, but from what I saw of Night 2, it was good. I was definitely expecting a little bit more out of Devlin and Santos Escobar. It was a great match, but I don't want to spoil anything because I know you haven't watched it yet, but it was a good show. It was a solid card with a very, very, very phenomenal main event.
Yeah, well, you and I have talked off air a little bit about NXT, and I have heard nothing but good things thus far from both yourself. And shout out to the Counted Out 7 podcast. I was texting with Tyler a little bit, and he mentioned the same thing, that he thought that the NXT card was quite good. The Hall of Fame, I have heard the same thing, kind of mixed reviews. I think some people really appreciate the pace of the show as opposed to some of the speeches we've gotten in the past. I do think that something is taken away when you don't have somebody induct the Hall of Fame inductees into the Hall of Fame. And somebody like Eric Bischoff, I definitely think that deserved a little bit more than 3 minutes. As from my understanding, he got about 3 minutes to do his speech. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more. But I understand, based on where we are right now in the world and all that kind of thing, that it wasn't possible to do certain aspects. So I'm glad that they did do it. And I think the other thing, too, is they had to try to get 2 classes in a relatively, palatable time frame. So it makes sense for this year. I hope that in the future there'll be some maybe some featurettes or some network specials that more illuminate some of the people that didn't have an opportunity to express themselves fully.
Yeah, it was also weird because unfortunately, due to travel issues right now, there was no Great Khali or Jushin Liger in attendance, as well as Ozzy Osbourne and William Shatner were not there. But I mean, Shatner's 90. Ozzy's, as far as I know, he's potentially in the UK. Liger's overseas, so is Khali, so it makes sense that they weren't there. But I didn't hate the show. The one thing I will say I hated, and I know you're going to chirp me for this later, is one question, and that's, what the fuck kind of shirt was Jerry the King Lawler wearing? Even by his standards, it was a bad shirt.
I haven't seen it. I think I saw a picture and he was wearing some sort of a blazer and shirt combination. I didn't really pay much attention to it, but I'll definitely keep an eye out for it when I do watch the Hall of Fame ceremony. It was I don't know, without question. I think Jerry Lawler is the guy to host the Hall of Fame. I think they tried Corey Graves and Renee Young a couple of times a few years ago.
One thing I will kind of spoil for you, just so you're not hyped up. Lawler only hosted the 2020 class. The 2021 was Caleb Braxton and Corey Graves.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm okay with that. I'm glad that he still did one, though. I think that he doesn't have to do everyone, but I think that it's good that he has a presence there. I think he's a really good host, and it'll be really fun to see what they do going forward with the Hall of Fame post, COVID, or once we're able to, maybe by next year, if people are back in stands, for arena-sized buildings, if they're going to have an opportunity to bring fans back in some capacity. And then from there, you have the wrestlers out as well, and then hopefully some inductors with the inductees. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited to see it. And with that being said, though, going on through WrestleMania weekend, we always have such fun stuff. I mean, several years now, we've had the NXT takeovers, we've had the Hall of Fame ceremony, we've had WrestleMania. And of course, one of the most fun nights of the year, maybe the best Raw of the year every year, is the Raw after WrestleMania. And there are so many fun moments I can point to in the last, say, decade or even longer of really, really outstanding WrestleMania, post-WrestleMania Raw moments. The one I think of immediately is the night after John Cena lost to The Rock at WrestleMania 28. You had Brock Lesnar come back and do his return. Now, for those of us that are familiar with the WWE product and are very, granular in terms of our fandom, we're aware that there are rumblings of him coming back. But I just saw that clip not too long ago of his return, and that pop that he got there in, I believe it was in Miami, was just outstanding. What a cool moment that was. I remember the night after WrestleMania 32, we talked about a couple weeks ago, Enzo and Cass at Roadblock. I mean, their big debut on Raw the night after WrestleMania 32 was huge. And even up to the last WrestleMania that was in front of a live crowd. We didn't get any Undertaker at WrestleMania 35, but then the next night we got that choke slam on Elias after he had been sort of eviscerated by John Cena. I thought was a lot of fun too. So, I think that there's such great feel-good moments, and especially so often there's great returns. Of course, Goldberg as well. Goldberg debuted the night after WrestleMania 19. Kevin Nash returned that night. So there's been a lot of history of great Raw after Mania moments. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know how you didn't touch on the best one ever, and that's the night after 29 when Dolph Ziggler cashed in and won the world title. Like, you want to talk a hot crowd. That crowd was insane for that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I do remember that very vividly. It's such a fun audience. I mean, they're all from different parts of the world, and you always get that huge reaction. It's the Bizarro World reaction they talked about so many times when they would do Raw in Toronto or Raw in Canada, where they would cheer for their favorite, like for the heels, and boo the baby faces and all that kind of thing. That's the atmosphere that you got at the Raw after WrestleMania, and I was such a fan of it. I was just thinking about another one. There was an 8-man tag the night after WrestleMania 25. I remember I was in Houston for WrestleMania 25, and then we actually ended up flying home the next day. So I caught Raw from here home in Ontario, and seeing Ricky Steamboat involved in the 8-man tag main event was really cool too. So Yeah, I think there are so many awesome moments, and it's going to be interesting to see how they try to pull off that big Raw after Mania moment on in the Thunderdome this year.
Well, one thing that I'm curious about with Mania this year, and this is all I want to talk about with this year's Mania because we beat it to death.
Absolutely.
I also don't even think I'm going to be watching live this year. I think it's all going to be a PVR thing, and I'll go back and watch it on Monday. But they're calling for a 75% chance of thunder showers each day now in Tampa.
Oh,
And
no.
they're saying that if it turns into a big lightning storm, they will have to evacuate the arena. So you're going to have the first night with a live crowd, and it's potentially going to have to be evacuated due to weather.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. Like, that's the worst string of luck. I mean, as you said, we've discussed this to death in terms of WrestleMania. We've even discussed on a previous podcast, I think about 3 or 4 weeks back from now, whether or not we think it's the right thing to even do it in front of a live crowd. And there's a lot of contrary beliefs and differing opinions. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I'm certainly excited. I'm going to be decorating my apartment shortly, and we have a whole menu and drink list on tap, myself and my girlfriend, for her first WrestleMania. So no matter what happens, it's going to be fun here from home, but definitely being in the live crowd. Can you imagine, like, having invested the time and the energy, and then, of course, the mental stress of worrying about COVID and then going to WrestleMania and then getting rained out? I can't even imagine. That would be horrible.
Yeah, that would be quite possibly the worst luck of any major company right now. Like, I don't know if you have been keeping up with any sports news lately, but the Toronto Blue Jays played the Texas Rangers last week, I believe, earlier this week, and there was almost 50,000 people at that game, which
Geez.
blew me the fuck away that, like, here we are in Ontario, back in a stay-at-home order where you can't even go into a Tim Hortons to get coffee, but yet in Texas, 50,000 people hanging out, no masks, watching baseball. Yeah. Why not?
100% just crushing Michelob Ultra and eating Frito pie. That's just crazy.
I mean, if that's your choice, go for it. But I feel like I'd be happy with somewhere in the middle, closer to what we're doing here. Like, I definitely don't want to go and be around 40,000 people right now. That's for damn sure.
100%. Now, you're definitely going to eat better and drink better here at home, and then, of course, you can have all the luxuries and comforts of home, as you were alluding to. If you decide you can't make it through the whole show, you can just pause it or record it and go and have a nap, or go and have go to bed for the night and all that kind of thing. So I think that we're lucky in that sense. I'm very excited, from a selfish standpoint, to see what it's going to be like to have fans back in attendance. I mean, it does add so much to the product. That's a very selfish thing, and I do fully own up to that. At the same token, though, I will say that the NFL did it with the Super Bowl. If the WWE is going to do it, fair enough. I don't put the onus solely on WWE. It also goes to the fans. If you decide to buy that ticket and go to the event, I think that you have to take ownership of that decision. You can't blame WWE for putting on the event. You certainly have to be mindful of what you're doing and not just blindly going into it because you want to go and be around wrestling fans and be at a stadium. So we'll see what happens, my friend. It's going to be quite an interesting event and quite an interesting weekend. I'm very much looking forward to it as we speak, and I'm starting to decompress from my work week, and it sounds like you are a little bit too, just getting into our rhythm. And we are not doing This Week in Wrestling History. We're going to return to that next week. We didn't do any trivia this week because, frankly, both of us were just so busy this week. We didn't have a ton of time. It was actually my turn to post the questions, and my apologies. Didn't have a chance to write them up. I've been a bad podcaster this week. But with that being said, as alluded to earlier, ladies and gentlemen, we are rebooking WrestleMania 2000 from Anaheim, California, April 2nd, 2000. It was a show. Not my favorite. In fact, as I said earlier, probably my least favorite Mania ever.
Tyrone, I need to cut you off for 1 second here, and it just makes me laugh. I just made this correlation in my mind. They called it WrestleMania 2000 instead of calling it 16 because it was the it thing to do at the time. How many different times have they put 2000 at the end of something and it does not work out? LOD 2000. Techno Team 2000. It's you put 2000 at the end, or you put the word new in front of, and it's terrible all the time.
Worked out pretty well for the New Age Outlaws, I think.
Okay, there's always an exception to the rule. I fully thought you were just going to say the new generation there, not the New Age Outlaws. But
no, I think I'll. Well, you brought it up before I did this time. You owe me a drink. I always thought that they called it WrestleMania 2000 because it was in the year 2000. I didn't really think that it was because it was like the in thing du jour. I was half expecting. I rewatched this show this afternoon while I was working and had a chance to watch the better part of it. I was expecting like a Surge energy drink or some sort of a throwback commercial, but there wasn't. Maybe a Stack or Two commercial or something, but we didn't get any of those. I'm sure if I throw an old SmackDown on from 2000, I get a Stack or Two or.
I don't know, man. I think that's too early for that. I think we're Stack or Two and things like that was more 02, 03, 04 era.
Certainly possible as I'm taking a sip of my Cottage Springs watermelon vodka soda here. So at this time in the company, we had just come off of, I believe it was October 19th, 1999. The WWF went public. They had their IPO, initial public offering. So this is the first WrestleMania since the WWE has had, board of directors in that traditional sense and been answering to stockholders. We also come off a couple of months previous, or rather about 6 weeks previous, Mick Foley's, first retirement out of the business in that Hell in the Cell match. I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit later on. I have some points I want to bring up with the Mick Foley angle, and I'm not sure if he's on your card or if he's not. But it was sort of, I sort of felt like the way that he went out with the Hell in the Cell at No Way Out in 2000 was kind of anticlimactic. I felt as though if you're going to have Mick Foley go out, maybe it should have been after the Rumble match. But that's a discussion for later on down the line here. We also have a lot of new talent. You look at this card and you look at all the people that are on it. I mean, we have the Radicals that have just come in. We have the Dudley Boys. We have Jericho's first WrestleMania, Kurt Angle's first WrestleMania. We have just this incredible influx of talent. I think that barring the acquisition of WCW a year later, I think this might have been the most stacked roster in WWF history in terms of in-ring talent. What do you think?
I mean, maybe of a newer generation, but you can't really argue the late 80s, especially tag teams, because almost every tag team could go then too. But as far as the newer, I don't even want to say new generation, because this itself was 21 years ago. Yeah, it was good. I wouldn't say it was the most stacked. I go back to 87, 88, 89 is probably the most stacked roster that they ever had, in-ring and character-wise.
No, and that's very fair. I'll give you that. I just thought in terms of like, well, first of all, you bring up tag teams. This entire card was tag team matches in some shape, form, or multi-person matches. So,
yeah, okay, it was tag team matches, but you weren't getting like real tag teams. I'm sorry, but how long did Head Cheese stick around for? They don't count.
Yeah, that's fair, and neither does TNA.
Well, TNA may still show up on this card. I'm not gonna lie.
And I'm completely fine with that. But that's pretty much where I wanted to go in terms of where we are right now in the business. I mean, WCW is on its legs at this point. They're really not on their last legs, rather. They're really not doing too much. It wouldn't be about a year from now or a little less than a year from now that they would actually be bought by Vince. So, and of course, the one big thing we need to talk about before we get into the rebooking is Steve Austin. I mean, the biggest star at the time. I know there's always contradictory, opinions of whether or not he's the biggest star in the history of wrestling. Some say Hogan, some say Rock, some say Austin. But at this point, Austin, in my mind, undeniably was the biggest star in wrestling in the late 90s. And he had been off with neck surgery. He was actually at the fan access for this event, but wasn't involved with the actual pay-per-view whatsoever. He would make an appearance the month later at Backlash and help The Rock secure the WWF Championship from Triple H. But he was nowhere to be found on this card, and it's just sort of an anomaly to think that the height, I would say 2000 is probably like the climax of the Attitude Era, that Austin wasn't on the majority of the cards for the year. So kind of interesting to think that, the Golden Goose wasn't there.
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say that if you think that The Rock is the biggest and greatest wrestler of all time, you can just go fuck yourself because he's not even in that category. If you ask me, it's 100% Hogan or Austin. And not only is Austin not on this card, there's no Undertaker either. It's one of the rare WrestleManias from 7 on that there is no Undertaker on it. I know he was injured, but I think he returned, 2 months later at Judgment Day? So he could have been ready at this point, and I guess maybe they had nothing for him. But yeah, it's weird. It's very weird that there's no Austin, no Taker, as you said in the climax of the Attitude Era. Also, like, it was just it shows with missing those two, and you know me, I'm an Austin fan, but I'm not a huge Austin fan. Same with Taker. But it shows with the two of them not being on this card and how lackluster this card was. You needed those stars.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you point that out. I mean, The Undertaker, I didn't really bring it up only because, he would make his return in ring fairly soon after this. It is a big glaring, missing spot. This was in an era before they had recognized the streak and all that kind of thing. But I think the only other WrestleMania he had missed up to this point was WrestleMania 10. And then he would return at SummerSlam 1994. But so in his illustrious run, he had missed... This is his second only WrestleMania that he had missed. So it's quite interesting to think that somebody with the lineage of his character was absent from this card. And also to think that, this was in the moments and the permutations of him changing the character for the first time. So, would the impact of an Undertaker return at WrestleMania as the American Badass have had the same impact that it did when he returned at Judgment Day a few months later? I think probably it would have. I think it would have been a cool way to finish off WrestleMania to have The Undertaker come out and return in that new gimmick. That would have been maybe the neatest way to finish the whole thing. But, for circumstances beyond our knowledge, it didn't happen. But bottom line, we're going to get into the rebooking of this card. I'm very much looking forward to it. As I said, it emanated from the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California on April 2nd, 2000. And Tyrone, I'm very interested to see what you did with this card because it's a heck of a card to try to rebook. So let's see where you went with this. You ready to go?
Yeah. Just one thing I wanted to touch on. It's kind of funny, the parallels between WrestleMania 2000 and the upcoming 37. We don't have a lot of star power on it. It's a lot of, I don't want to say newer talent per se, but a lot of talent who haven't had the chance to get themselves over. It's almost like we've seen this experiment before and it went horribly wrong, and they're trying to redo it this year with hopefully a lot better results.
Okay, I have to contradict you on that. I could not disagree more in terms of the star power factor. I think that if you look at the Attitude Era in general and just how popular wrestling was in a bubble in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody... I mean, I say everybody, but I would say 80% of the roster was over, super over. I mean, even down to like Too Cool and Rikishi, Chyna, Road Dogg was over. The Rock was super over. He was the second most over guy in wrestling at this point, especially in the WWE. So I have to argue with you that there's, I don't think that there's a parallel in terms of star power. I think there's a parallel in terms of, I think there's something missing for both shows.
See, I almost would have argued with you that this year there's more star power on it when you've got guys like Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Edge, Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, even somebody like a Bad Bunny who is a gigantic recording artist and giving them so much mainstream media. I almost feel, I guess you could make the Ice-T comparison with 2000 as well, but I feel like this year has more star power. And I know we could argue each other till we're blue in the face in this, so I think we should nip that in the butt before we kill each other.
I completely agree. I think that's a agree to disagree conversation. So without further ado, my friends, are you ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
Let's let it rip. Let's get it on. We've got our opening contest, which is the Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan defeating the Godfather and D'Lo Brown, accompanied to the ring by Ice-T and the Ladies of the Night. What do you got for me, pal?
So the opening contest of WrestleMania 2000 is a one-on-one match with X-Pac taking on Kane. We're going to continue on their storyline, hatred of each other, that I think deserved a WrestleMania blow-off. You're going to get X-Pac going over after Pete Rose still interferes, distracts Kane. X-Pac hits a low blow into an X-Factor, gets the pin, but we still get the tombstone on Pete Rose at the end. Everybody's happy with that.
I am 100% on board with this. I completely agree with you that the X-Pac Kane story needed to be blown off in a better way. I remember even the end of 1999, we had the X-Pac Tory Christmas story, all that kind of fun stuff. That's one of those ones that I think definitely was sort of lost in the shuffle in terms of the Attitude Era. We had seen this build up throughout 1999, and then they finally became tag team partners, they being X-Pac and Kane, and then becoming champions. It was a real cool story. They even got to the point where they collaborated on their theme music. You had the beginning of Kane's, and then when the explosion of the pyro happened, then you had the DX music start. Like, I thought it was a really, really well-told story all the way up until the breakup, and then the blow-off.
And not to mention that X-Pac gave Kane his first words with the voice scrambler.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think his first words were with Paul Bearer. Actually, I think maybe I'm wrong. I don't recall.
I'm pretty sure it was him holding the voice box up to his throat and saying "suck it."
Oh, I thought it was with Kane and Steve Austin, and he put up the thing to his voice and said, "If I don't win the title, I will set myself on fire." But
either way, he sounded like a giant fucking robot.
He totally did. No, it was, I completely agree with you. I think that the blow off needed to be a lot better. And I think they definitely, based on how this is one of the rare angles in the Attitude Era that was sort of had some legs and there was a lot of history built into it. It had gone for the better part of a year. So I definitely feel like a WrestleMania blow off is warranted. I like the way you set it up. I like that you still have Pete Rose in it, and you have X-Pac getting the win. It makes sense. I mean, as far as a blow-off goes, I don't know if you have X-Pac go over. I sort of feel like maybe Kane should have gotten the win and getting his revenge if this is going to be the blow-off match. And is there no stip in this? Is this the definitive blow-off in your mind, or is it still going to
In my mind, this is the blow-off. I want Kane to move into a main event picture after this. It doesn't hurt him to lose, especially not cleanly, which is why you get Pete Rose in there. You kind of get that in its own weird little storyline that's continuing for the last couple of years. X-Pac can move on. Kane can move on. Story's done. Like I said, it doesn't hurt Kane to lose, especially not cleanly.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it doesn't hurt Kane. I do agree with you. It doesn't hurt him. But at the same token, I have to ask that, like, at this point, who was the more established star? Was it Kane or was it X-Pac? I mean, certainly, X-Pac in his different iterations had more exposure on WWF television at this time. So I think there's an argument to be made that maybe X-Pac might have been the more established star at this point in 2000.
I agree. I think he was too. I think Kane was the more over star at this point. I think by this point, people were starting to give him the X-Pac heat, where a lot of people were overseeing him. But you get X-Pac to win. I wouldn't necessarily put him in a world title picture after this, but he can go into the Intercontinental title picture. He can go into a semi-main event type thing with the Jerichos and the Angles and keep moving up the card. We can get fresh feuds out of it too. No more DX 2000.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you did the right thing here. I think it was good. I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about how you got there and that kind of thing. So I'm with you on that. All good. You ready to move on to the next one?
Oh boy, am I.
Yeah, well, the next match on the card is a hardcore battle royal for the WWF Hardcore Championship, and you had Hardcore Holly going over by defeating Crash Holly. And if I remember correctly, in canon, this was actually a botched spot that they corrected the next night on Raw.
Yeah, there was no actual 3 count because Timmy White was smashing his hand in glass, so he just kind of stopped counting. But on this card, the next matchup is a hardcore battle royale for the Hardcore Championship. I kept it. I think it's a stupid match, don't get me wrong, but it got a lot of guys on the card, a lot of undercard into mid-card. The only thing that I changed is I have Taz winning it. Because Taz had just debuted a couple months earlier. He was kind of already thrown way down after he choked out Angle and gave Angle his first loss. Taz kind of fell off the card. I at least gave him the title. It keeps him at least with a championship. Yes, it's the hardcore title, but we've seen big ass start. The Undertaker held it. Kane held it. Big Show held it. My favorites, Raven and Goldust, held it. I think it's not a bad thing to have Taz win this and keep him in people's minds.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with your logic. I like the idea that you kept the match. See, it's funny with me. Like, I kind of feel I like that you had Taz win it, and it makes sense for me when you have Taz win it. But I do feel like this could have been like the match that you do on Heat. The Hardcore Battle Royal might have been a fun match to do on Heat, and that's how you get the whet the appetite of the fans and all that kind of thing, and then you get into the more serious stuff on the main card. I do think that you putting Taz over warranted being on the main card, but had it stayed the same with the hardcore crash stuff, I would have put it on Heat.
That's fair. I get where you're coming from, but I wanted to put it's a title match. I think title matches should all be on the main card, not on Heat. Even the hardcore. It was on 15, it was on 16, 17, and 18. So I'm not going to take a title match and throw it on Heat personally.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I think that maybe for me, we've talked about this so many times that, as we get older, looking back on the Attitude Era, I think that a lot of the stuff doesn't hold up very well. I sort of think that the hardcore division in general, other than the first maybe 6 or 8 months of it, is pretty lousy stuff. I mean, it became comedic stuff. Some of the stuff was really good. I'll never forget that Crash Holly segment when he was going through the playland and all that kind of thing. Like, that was one of the best segments I remember, ever seeing in terms of comedy for WWF. But in general, I found the Hardcore Championship just so watered down. It was really what was the precursor to the 24/7 by the end of it. But
I'm totally 100%. But the Hardcore, as you said, 6 to 8 months, I would give the Hardcore Championship. It kind of had a resurgence in 2001 when Raven had it, and you had a lot of the ECW guys coming in, RVD, Jeff Hardy, Mike Awesome. A lot of those guys who held it kind of gave it a little bit more meaning. It wasn't just as much as that Crash Holly spot was great. It wasn't him in a playland or him in the airport diving into the luggage area. It actually kind of meant something again.
Yeah, and that's totally fair, and I'll give you that. And I think to your point as well, when you look at that, it did go through those ebbs and flows. So it actually helped the performer, like a Raven, for example, to your point, that when he gets a hold of it and then it becomes a serious title again, it actually does nothing more than enhance the guy that's holding it. So when he can take a Raven, for example, holding the title that has been kind of marginalized for a while, take it from there and then bring it back to some vein of sort of serious competitiveness, I think it did a service to not only the title, but also the guy holding it, because you sort of hold that guy in a higher regard. So, yeah, no, I'm good with that. I think that you did a good job with that.
I mean, I feel like I'm not going to try and pat myself on the back here, but I tend to kind of give you question marks with a lot of my rebooking a lot of the time. I think this is the most logical one I've done, this entire card. I feel like you'll disagree at 1 or 2 points, but overall, I'm pleased with myself on this one.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what you've done, because you have no lack of talent. I mean, there's so much talent on this card that I just feel like you have every opportunity to make some really solid matchups.
I fully thought you were putting me over there and saying that I don't lack talent personally.
No, you don't lack talent either. I mean, sometimes you make questionable decisions. Kurt Hennig Royal Rumble, but I mean, I think that you have a good headspace for everything. So, with that being said, you ready to go to the next one?
Yeah. What more can I say about this hardcore battle? Yeah, let's move on.
I don't think there's much left. Much more meat on the bone to coin a phrase. So the next contest on the card is TNA Tess and Albert, accompanied by Trish Stratus, defeating Head Cheese, Al Snow and Steve Blackman, accompanied by my favorite and yours, Chester McCheeserton. What do you got for me, bud?
Well, I hate to burst your bubble. There's no Chester McCheeserton on this card. You know me, I like to go with the ebbs and flows of WrestleMania. I don't think it makes sense for a long card to have the crowd so amped up, because you need them amped up for the main event. So here is where we dip down a little bit. The next match on the card is the Godfather and D'Lo Brown, accompanied by Ice-T and the Ladies of the Night, as you said, going up against TNA. It's a pretty quick match. It's only going to go about 3 or 4 minutes. And just so Jerry Lawler can scream it, the Pimps win.
I'm sorry. I love that you the way that you like pleaded your case for this match, but I also love that you refer to like TNA versus Head Cheese as like really bringing the crowd up off their feet and making it like, oh, you don't want to like the crowd to like.
No. First of all, it's not Head Cheese. It's D'Lo and the Godfather against TNA in this one, and this is to bring the crowd down a little bit. To give, like, you still get to dance to Ice-T rapping. You get to be a total pervert jabroni and look at the Godfather's ladies. Like, it's what wrestling fans in 2000 wanted.
No, I'm not saying that. I realize you changed the match. I'm just saying that your reasoning for it is just funny because it makes it sound like TNA versus Head Cheese would have really brought the crowd to their feet, is what I'm saying. It was funny the way you kind of.
I get it now.
Yeah, so I like this. I think it's good. I think it's a much better choice. I mean, I'm a big Boss Man fan. I'm actually a fan of the Boss Man Bull Buchanan, tag team. And to be very plain speaking, I'm a big fan of Boss Man in like the Attitude Era. I loved his gimmick. Obviously it was diminished quite a bit after he left the corporation and all that kind of thing. But I like this idea of you having, TNA versus Godfather and D'Lo Brown. I could even see
the
some
Pimps.
Between
say it, Jay.
And the Ladies of the Night.
Jay. The Pimps. Say it.
The Pimps. I'll call them the Pimps. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I was just looking for the names. I'm sorry, man. I've had a long week. I'm tired. my brain's fried. So no. The Pimps versus TNA. I'll take that. No problem. The Pimps versus TNA. I think it'd be a really good match. I think it'd be very well worked. And as I said, I think that you would have, some interaction between Trish and the Ladies of the Night. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I'm a little sad that we're not going to see Chester, or maybe we will later on. But no, who goes over in this one?
I already told you, the Pimps, so that Jerry Lawler can scream, the Pimps win. Way to pay attention, Jay. Way to pay attention.
Yes. My sincere apologies. I do apologize. Okay, and so would that be like with the combination of the pimp drop and the frog splash?
You mean the lowdown? Absolutely.
Yes, without question. Well, I don't think we have too much more to discover on that particular match. I like the rebooking; it was well done. Do you want to slip on to the next one?
Slip it on in like a knife in butter, baby.
Sounds good. Next up, we have Edge and Christian defeating the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys in a triangle ladder match for the Tag Team Championships.
Okay. So I get a lot of flack lately from people who listen to this show that I do a lot of number one contender matches on my cards. I really don't care if you don't like it. It's something that I think needs to be brought back to make it seem like somebody's just not all of a sudden like, I'm coming for you, blah, blah, blah. So the next match on the card is the Big Show going one-on-one with The Rock in a number one contenders match. No? No.
I'm just thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. Now, would they get that title shot tonight at WrestleMania 2000?
No, it brings a Backlash. That would be the next one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's for Backlash.
Okay.
So backstory on this.
Yes.
Rumble 2000. I'm a firm believer that Big Show should have won that. Rock's feet hit the ground first. There's video proof of it. So we go off of that. I know we had the match at, I believe it was No Way Out a month earlier, where it was a similar thing. But that one ends, in my booking, inconclusive. And instead of getting this convoluted, a McMahon in every corner, 4 corners match for the title, I didn't like that. I felt like we could have had a couple other matches with the star power, hence why we get this. And to top it all off, I have the Big Show winning. Shane McMahon does interfere, but the Big Show is going to win and become your number 1 contender.
Yeah, I don't hate it. In fact, I was thinking about, trying to get into your head about how you would rebook this, to be very honest about it. I was thinking about it this afternoon. And I have a feeling I know where you're going with this. And to tell you the truth, I think it's the exact same way I'd rebook it as well. I don't know, but I don't want to give away the lead here.
The only thing that I really toyed with this one was putting this match so early in the card. The only way I'll justify that is it's WrestleMania. Every match should have that big match vibe for the most part. And I didn't want to go into the tag title match right after a tag team match, so I thought I'd break it up a little bit there.
Okay, my only question, Akshay, you know what? No, I can't ask that without you. Well, you know what? I can. I can ask this. Will The Rock be seen again tonight or no?
No.
Oh, okay. I feel like this is at the point where WrestleMania's matches...
Wait. Hold on. You mean just seen in general or in a match?
Seen in general.
Yes, he might.
Okay. No, I don't want to give it away again, but I'm just, I like that. Personally, I like the placement on the card. I really do. And I like that you had Big Show go over. I think that there for sure should have been more made of that Big Show Rock angle, especially coming out of the Royal Rumble. I completely agree with that. My only thing is that I feel like we're at a time at this point where it's not like Mania's of maybe 10 years later where every match has that big fight feel. I don't feel like maybe I'm wrong. I might just
okay. No. I get where you're coming from, but when you look at the next year's Mania, it is the one that everybody touts for the most part as being the best. Where, yes, not every match had a main event feel. There was still your 6-man with Taz and the APA against the Right to Censor, but the crowd was still hot for that one. They loved Bradshaw, they loved Fruit, they loved Taz, they hated RTC. So to me, this was the beginning of every Mania having that big match feel.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. And I also think that there's a case to be made that when you have so much talent on a card like this one, or so many other WrestleManias, some are better than others, obviously, but I think there's a case to be made that sometimes there's too much big time stuff. Like obviously it's the big event of the year, but to me it's kind of like ice cream. Like if you have ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 5 days a week or 7 days a week, you don't like ice cream as much. I do like the idea of having a ton of like big time stories on the card, big stars, big blow-offs, or starts to angles, whatever you want to do. But I think sometimes certain Manias have had almost too much on them. So you know what? I'm completely fine with this, and I like that Big Show went over. This is going to be one of those cards, it sounds like to me, where I just agree with a lot of what you say, because honestly, like in my head, I thought about booking this match as well. So I think you're on the right track. If we're both thinking the same thing, I think we're probably on the right track.
Well, I'm surprised that you are on board as much as you are so far. I mean, we're only about halfway through, so there's still plenty of time for you to get a little annoyed if I have a Kurt Hennig return down the road, but we'll see.
We most certainly will. No, I think that was good. I think it was actually smart to put it on that point in the card as well. Like I was thinking about those old house shows in the 80s or even the 90s, like when you had Hogan go on before intermission, or you had Austin or whomever it was, Rock. You'd have do like the big match before intermission, and then you'd do a different match to main event the house show. So I kind of like that format. So there's a sentimental value there for me. So I like the way you placed it. Now, next up is supposed to be Terry Reynolds with the Fabulous Moolah defeating the Cat with Mae Young. I don't know if that's staying. Of course, Val Venus was a special guest referee. I don't know where the tag team match fits into this. Where are you taking me next, man?
Well, as much as I enjoy Terry Reynolds and Stacey Carter's in-ring work, the next match is a triangle ladder match for the tag team championship with the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian. I couldn't change it. It's a thing of beauty. Edge and Christian are still going over. Legit copy and paste the match. Nothing is changing.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't think this would change, to be very honest about it. I think an argument can be made that this might be better than the TLC matches. I think it's a little bit more pure for wrestling purists. I think that there's an argument can be made that this one was a little bit less full of plunder. It was a little bit more, sort of in-ring, work rate sound, if that makes sense. Like, where do you lie with this? Do you think that there's...
It wasn't a spot fest, which is what the other ones kind of turned into. Like, we all remember the image of, I believe it was Devon Dudley hanging from the turnbuckle or hanging from the thing and falling. And then at 17, Jeff Hardy hanging from it and Edge spearing him off of it. Like, these are iconic images in our heads. But yes, this one definitely in ring, way better. It was also the first time that we saw something like this with 3 teams involved. Like, you look at No Mercy the year before, you had the finals of the Terry Invitational Tournament with Edge and Christian and the Hardys, which was fantastic in a ladder match. And then at the Rumble, you had the Dudleys and the Hardys in, I think it was a tables match, correct?
I believe at Royal Rumble, it was a tables match after the tit tournament. Yeah, that's right.
So I didn't feel like saying the acronym. I thought I'd spell it out and people could play off of that. But yeah, this is the first time that we saw essentially a TLC match, because you were getting everything in it, but it just wasn't called that. So to me, it's the best one out of all of them. I would put this, then TLC 2, then original TLC in that order.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I mean, for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of, plunder matches. I never have been. I think that they have their place. I have a ton of respect for every guy that's been in one, and every woman, obviously, now. Certainly for the TLC matches, I understand their place in history. It's never been something that I would look to as an exhibition of what, fundamental professional wrestling is. I think that if you want to show somebody that's never seen wrestling a match, maybe it's one that you put on there just for fun because of the, like all the crazy spots and all that kind of thing. But it's certainly not one that I would point to as like a masterpiece in like work rate, as you alluded to. So I think that this is a very underrated match, and it's lost in the shuffle in terms of the other matches that preceded it, or not preceded it, but followed it. I think that you're right on the money in terms of giving it its just due and keeping it exactly where it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say anything bad about the match other than the fact of what you covered there about not being a big fan of the kind of stipulation matches, the car crash matches, if you will. I know they're not for everybody. I personally love this one. So, yeah, it's there. I got nothing else to really say about it. We can move on if you're good.
Yeah, 100%. I'm good to go. There's not a lot you can say about it other than what we've already said. So, the next match on the card is Chyna and Too Cool, Grandmaster Sexay, and Scotty 2 Hotty defeating the Radicals, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero. And I got to think you came up with something better than this.
The next match on the card is a fatal 4-way elimination match for the WWF Women's Championship, with Stephanie McMahon Helmsley defending the title against Jacqueline, Ivory, and Lita.
Really? Well,
I mean, it's WrestleMania. Like, you know me. There should always, I don't care what the era is, there should always be a women's wrestling match on the card. And if it's just going to be the Cat and Terry, that's a goddamn slap in the face. So this one, Stephanie had just won the title. Jesus, I think on the Raw before, or the SmackDown before, only a few days before. So I thought, why the hell not? Let's do this. It's a fatal four-way elimination match. It's going to have Jacqueline get eliminated first by Lita after a Lita assault. Then Ivory gets taken out by Lita. Lita's just running roughshod on everybody. Then all of a sudden, referee is slightly distracted. Out comes Triple H, gives Lita a pedigree. Stephanie McMahon, without doing a goddamn thing, retains the title, retains the heat.
Well, that would be a good way to retain the heat, that's for sure. And it would certainly, I think, for the live crowd, give a lot of heat when you see Triple H later on in the show. So I'm assuming you'll see him anyways. So I'm surprised you put this on here. Only because, Stephanie McMahon was the champion. I understand why you had to retain. You have some really solid workers in there, so you would have had some good in-ring action, between Stephanie. But yeah, I'm okay with this. I'd rather.
Oh, and that's it. Like she played the chicken shit the whole time. She pretty much hid outside, ran around, didn't do a damn thing, did not touch anybody until she pinned Lita.
Well, at this point, I can't see her doing much else. She certainly wasn't trained. Stephanie has the ability to make a match workable. We've seen her in examples. I think the most handy one would be with Ronda Rousey, with Triple H and Kurt Angle. Like, obviously, the match was very heavily, choreographed and all that kind of thing. But
I was going to say scripted,
choreographed. But, I think that when push comes to shove, she can get the job done. She's certainly not an in-ring worker to any stretch. But she plays her part extremely well. So
she's a McMahon. She tells the story more so with her facial expressions and her cowardice than her in-ring ability.
100%. I agree. So I can see this. Even at this time in 2000, she was so new to television. She'd only been on for about 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months at this point. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it's good. I like the booking. So far, you haven't really bothered me too much with this card. I feel like this is last week where we're winding back again, where, last week we did WrestleMania 18, and you seemed pretty kosher with everything that I was doing. So far, I'm good with this. We'll see what you got next. Next up on the card, we have Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and Kurt Angle in a 2-fall triple threat match for the Intercontinental and European Championships. So the first fall was for the Intercontinental Championship, and the second fall was for the European Championship. What do you got for me here?
Next on the card, we have a 6-man tag match. Too Cool and Rikishi with Chyna in their corner, taking on Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and Eddie Guerrero of the Radicals.
Okay.
Ups and downs, bud. You can't keep them high the entire time. And yes, all these guys were super over, but compared to the Eurocontinental Championship match or the ladder match, you're not going to get the same reaction for these guys.
No, I'll get no argument out of me. I completely agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. I think that you needed to have a match like this. Obviously, it's not going to have the same, you have to have ebbs and flows. And we've talked about this on multiple occasions. And I think that we've both learned this, and we know this instinctually as wrestling fans. But as we've started to rebook these cards, I think that both you and I have become more refined in terms of the ebbs and flows and how you book a card based on how we've redone them. So, no, I completely get why you did this. I have to ask. I'm totally fine with Rikishi being in the match, but is there a reason why you took Chyna out? Because she was so, ingratiated into sorry, I'm looking for the word right now. She was wrestling the men at this time. The intergender match is what I was looking for.
And I, again, nothing against Chyna. She was super over, great character, decent worker. But there was a match on the original card where it was Kane and X-Pac and Dog versus Kane and Rikishi, which to me was a really thrown together dumb tag match. So I thought, why not put Rikishi with Too Cool? They already have the team. They're already history. Like, it just made sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. If I'm not mistaken, it was not too far. Had it already happened at this point that Eddie Guerrero got his shoulder dislocated or his elbow dislocated, actually? Was that? Yeah, I think
No, I think it was when he debuted with the company, he was injured.
okay, so he was back at this point. That's right. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's right. So, yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, I have no issues with China being in the ring. I'm not a big fan of intergender matches to begin with. I'm totally fine with her being on the card because she's, a huge star at this point. But
The ninth wonder of the world.
without question, for this time frame, she was a big time star for the company. I think she was on a bit of a decline at this point. Now, when she paired up with Eddie, that was some of the best stuff she ever did in her career. And same with Eddie, actually. I think that the two of them together, it was an awesome combination for that little time frame that they were together. I think that you swapping out Rikishi makes a lot of sense. I think if anybody on this card that could have been utilized better, it would have been Rikishi. I think that he had tenure with the company, being part of the Head Shrinkers and then being Fatu and all this kind of stuff. So give him a spot. He was obviously on the card with Kane, but I really like the idea of him being with his boys, Too Cool, and then going from there, being in this match. And it would have been a really, really well-worked match. I mean, Rikishi was a big guy, but he was a Samoan. He had in his bloodline a really solid worker. So I can imagine this match being a really, really solid match.
Yeah, and how it plays out is Rikishi and Too Cool pick up the win after the seeds are being planted for China and Eddie. Little flirting going on. Eddie gets distracted by China. He's legit just being a sleazy dude and looking at her ass the entire time. And it allows for Scotty 2 Hotty to get him from behind, hit the worm. Rikishi then hits a bonsai drop. Game over.
Yep. I'm with that. I get that 100%. I feel like that's exactly the way to book the match too. You get Eddie distracted by China, and then that can plant the seeds for the eventual break of the Radicals as well. I think it wasn't too far removed. I think it was actually that Judgment Day pay-per-view in 2000, the one we alluded to earlier with the Undertaker's return, where we had a triple threat match between Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero. So it wouldn't be too long before these guys broke off into different angles and different feuds. I think it served a purpose for them to be a faction in the beginning of their run in the WWF. And to have this plant the seed and then build to it for 2 months and then finally have that blow off, if you continue to along and have that match at Judgment Day, makes a ton of sense. And then you can break off into Eddie's infatuation with China. I think it's really well booked. You did a great job. There's nothing so far that bothers me.
Also, sorry to cut you off there, but also by this point, Chris Benoit was pretty much not in the Radicals anymore. He was, but he clearly was the one that they were making the big star.
Yeah, it was almost like, like when Flair would break off, the Horseman and be, have his issue on the main event. And then he would be still involved with the promos with all the other guys and, with Tony Schiavone and all that kind of thing. But he really wasn't involved with the other angles as much as, his own program with whomever he was feuding with. So, yeah, I think that you're on the money with that. I think it's a good booking.
Well, I'm just going to lead us into the next match because I feel like I may have thrown an extra one on there. And the next match is a triple threat 2 out of 3 falls match for the Eurocontinental title. I didn't change it. It was another beautiful match. You still get Jericho winning the European. You still get Benoit winning the Intercontinental. You still get Angle walking around saying how he was never pinned and he didn't lose.
Yeah. No, 100%. I don't think this is another one you can change. I mean, we've talked about this so many times on the podcast. You and I, we both have differing opinions of Chris Benoit in terms of watching his matches. Neither one of us will ever disagree on what happened with Benoit. And, we both think it's abhorrent. I think it's one of the most disgusting things we'll ever hear about in the history of wrestling or even just the world period. It was an awful thing that happened with Benoit.
We don't need to talk about it.
No, we don't need to talk about it. I just wanted to say that we both agree that we're not big fans of, not big fans. That's the wrong way to say it. We both hate what Benoit did.
Yeah,
but what I'm trying to say is that
for me, it's
go ahead.
Yeah, Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, it's hard to watch his matches, especially hearing commentators call him the Crippler and just
Yeah.
horrible, horrible things like that. But with this one, I'm not gonna lie, what I did was I muted it, and it was totally fine for me to watch it.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I mean, for me, like, I think I have an easier time watching Benoit matches because I can compartmentalize it a bit. But that's not a knock on you. That's just, the way I am. I'm okay with, watching certain matches. Would I watch a best of Chris Benoit series? Probably not. But, for the purposes of these rebookings, I definitely, I enjoy his work. What can I say? I enjoy his work as a wrestler, and this match, I don't think should change. It was pretty good. It was like not even pretty good. It was quite well done, and I really enjoyed, the finishes of both. And I think that coming out of it, you get that awesome opportunity for Angle to really showcase his charisma and his talents of, expanding that character. So I really like the idea of how they booked this. And of course you can break off from that and have both Benoit and Jericho go off into separate programs. So yeah, I think the match was perfect the way it was.
Agreed. Like I couldn't touch it because not only do you have them break off into separate things, but you still have Kurt Angle playing that whiny, better than everybody heel. And the fact that he lost both of his championships without being pinned is so fucking perfect for that character. It's him just complaining how he never lost. And then, for God's sakes, it's Kurt Angle. He would go on to be champion within a few months anyway, still within his rookie year. It hurt him to lose, not at all. Wow, that was a terrible sentence. It did not hurt him to lose at all.
Not at all. I completely agree with you. I think you're spot on with that. And I also think that, also adds fuel to the fire coming off of that controversy with him and Taz and all that kind of thing. We got into a lot of that on television leading up to WrestleMania from the Royal Rumble. So it sort of, adds fuel to the fire and adds to the character. So I'm 100% with you. I think it was perfectly booked and I wouldn't change anything.
Well, I think we should move on to whatever is next then, shouldn't we?
Well, according to this particular card I have in front of me, it's supposed to be Kane and Rikishi versus D-Generation X, but that's not happening.
So next up, we have a tag team match. We have Farouk and Bradshaw, the Acolytes, taking on Bull Buchanan and the Big Boss Man.
Oh, I'm so glad you put this on the card. I love it. I love that. Oh, what a hard-hitting match that would be. That brings
By the way, it's also a barroom brawl.
Oh, I like that. See, I would take that over a hardcore battle royal any day of the week, twice on Sunday. I like that a lot, and I can just imagine like the Boss Man and JBL going back and forth. I watched this event, as I said earlier today, and watching Bull Buchanan do that top rope leg drop, the hang time that guy got.
Not only that, but the fact that he could literally run and just step up to the top rope. Like, the agility that man had was ridiculous.
No question. And the fact that they didn't do more with him, wasn't he like called B squared or something towards the end of his run?
It was either B squared or B2. He was like John Cena's bodyguard who, after Cena would rap, he would just go, "Booyah!"
Yeah, it was horrible. No, he had a tremendous upside. I think that he's one of those guys that, had he come along maybe a decade later, would have been much more, or even a decade earlier. I think that the emphasis was so much on character, from like the late 90s to the mid 2000s that, had he come a decade earlier, a decade later, I think he would have made a bigger impact. But yeah, exactly to your point, like the agility that he had hitting that top rope and then doing that leg drop, I was just blown away by it. Every time I see it, I just forget it. And then I'm just blown away by it each time. So I just love that you got Boss Man on the card. Thank you for that. I love that you got the Acolytes on the card. I love the Acolytes as a tag team. So I'm a happy man right now.
Yeah, at this point, the Acolytes weren't really I don't think they were the APA yet. I think they were just still the Acolytes, kind of in limbo, not really knowing what was going on. But I put them in the barroom brawl because when that character happened, when that gimmick happened, that's what they became. So you have a hard-hitting, really, really snug, almost looking too snug match with the Acolytes going over.
Yeah, and that's the way it should have been, I think, at this point. I mean, you want to get Buchanan over, obviously, and he would have gotten the rub from Bossman. But I mean, I think having Bossman as the leader of the team, I think it makes sense to, propel the APA. They were obviously going to do more with them in the future. So, no, it makes sense. I like that you put this match on the card. I'm very happy the Bossman's on the card. So, yeah, there's nothing so far that you've booked that I haven't really cared for. So, we'll see where you go next with this one. Now, the next matchup on the card is supposed to be the main event. It's supposed to be Triple H with Stephanie McMahon Helmsley defeating The Rock with Mr. McMahon, Mick Foley with Linda McMahon, and The Big Show with Shane McMahon in a fatal four-way elimination match. This is obviously changed. What do you have for me, pal?
So I have Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, defending the WWF Championship against a newly turned the one Billy Gunn.
Excuse me?
Psych! I have Triple H versus Cactus Jack in the main event.
Walk me through it.
So you have Triple H come out, and he is flagged with Degeneration X. You have X-Pac and Road Dogg with him. Foley comes out in full Cactus Jack gear. He's not Mick Foley. He is Cactus Jack. Comes out, realizes that he might be outnumbered, and he does that big arm, come on out, wave from the back. And little Dewey Johnson comes out. Dwayne The Rock Johnson comes out, and he goes out and he completely destroys DX. Rock is then gone. So is DX. You have a one-on-one. Cactus Jack, Triple H. It is just an actual wrestling match. There's no hardcore bullshit. There's no screw jobs, anything like that. And I have Hunter going over clean with a pedigree in the middle of the ring.
Okay, I can get behind this. Interesting, though. I mean, if you look at the way it was booked, I mean, originally, it's
okay. So the retirement angle didn't happen at No Way Out. In my mind, the street fight, Triple H, obviously Triple H is winning them, but he gives Mick Foley one more hope, and this is the retirement match. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning of it, but this is the retirement match. Foley loses, he's out. No more Cactus Jack. I mean, we're still going to get the commish and all that shit, but this is Foley's in-ring retirement until whenever he came back, which I think was 20.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with this. I mean, even in terms of, I was just going to say to you before you elaborated, I was going to say that it's sort of like reverse booking where you have you have a street fight, then you have a Hell in a Cell, and you have a straight singles match. I feel in terms of the logic of the Attitude Era, I'm totally fine with this. And also I feel as though this is what I was going to say to you earlier was this is exactly how I would have booked this Mania. I felt like the product as a whole was so over that you having Foley versus Triple H as the final would have been really, really good. I just felt like the actual main event that we saw was so convoluted, especially with all the McMahons in the corner and all that kind of thing. I understand why they do it. They were trying to bring as much, star power and gravitas and attention to the card as they possibly could and to the main event. But I definitely feel like Triple H versus Foley at Mania 2000 would have been the way to main event it. Again, I love the fact that you put Rock and Big Show early on in the card, and then you have Rock there to fight off DX and all that kind of thing. I think it was really, really well done. And I think the right guy won. I mean, obviously Foley's going to retire. He's not going to go further. He's done as a full-time competitor in ring, and of course he's going to give the rub to Triple H. So I think that's the way to go with it. I mean, they went months and months with Triple H and Cactus. So this should have been the blow-off. I 100% agree with this. I have no problem with this cover.
The only thing that I toyed with doing was putting Austin in as a referee. But I didn't want to do that because he wasn't cleared. He wasn't going to be back in ring for a while. So I didn't want to give fans that Austin's back only to have it taken away from them.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, we get that a month later at Backlash. I think it was April 30th, 2000 in Washington, D.C. We would have Rock win the title from Triple H, and then Austin would come out and help him. And they were building towards that. So it was, they did that anyways. But, the only thing that I thought of, like I mentioned earlier, was it'd be kind of cool if you'd had like The Undertaker return at this WrestleMania. And then, you have Triple H go over, and then Undertaker comes out, and that's his return. It doesn't even need to be cleared necessarily. You can build to a match, but just to have him come out and do that return with the American Badass thing would have been really cool.
I get that 100%, but I'm kind of old school in the way that I think that obviously the title should main event, and once the winner of the title happens, that's it. No more surprises after that. That's the end of the show.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for Mania, that's absolutely the right thing to do. I agree with that. I'm just booking based on like Attitude Era, like logic and stuff like that. But no, I think that you're right. I do agree with you 100%. I think that especially for me, that's fine for a finish of like Backlash. But for Mania, it should be, the winner's the winner. You have controversy, or no controversy, one case or the other, and then you go on and you start building to new feuds going forward. So, yeah, man, like, bottom line, I think you booked a really good card here. I don't have any problems with any of it. There's nothing the only thing that I might have changed.
I think that may be a goddamn first that you've ever said that to me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, really, like, I don't know that I could have done a better job. And I mean, I think that I would have toyed around with booking the way you booked it. So I'm glad you booked it the way you did. I thought it was really, really well done, handled smart. And the only thing I might have done was taken the Battle Royal, the hardcore Battle Royal off the main card. But having Taz win it, I'm fine with it. So, yeah, honestly, you got a clean sweep, man. I have no problems this week whatsoever. It's a first for us.
I mean, we might as well end our WrestleMania, I don't want to say week because it's been 3 weeks, off with a positive note. Because there was so much shit on this card that, to quote a phrase, I made chicken salad out of chicken shit there, my friend.
You most certainly did. And it wasn't even bad quality chicken. It was just like, we had like top-notch chicken, and then you had Miracle Whip and, no name relish to it. That's when it becomes an issue. So I think that you're doing pretty good. Like, all the constituent elements were in the right place. So I'm 100% on board with you. I think you did great.
Well, thanks, pal. I appreciate that. Now, I got to tell you, you're up next week. And I'm kind of going to be a dickhead right now. Like, spoiler alert, Jay and I sometimes plan this out where we'll be like, all right, in 2 weeks we're doing this, blah, 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 because our lives are hectic. It's what we have to do. Jay has no idea what I'm giving him next week, and I am very, very stoked on this.
Oh, God. Can you please... We just had this perfect episode. We both agreed on everything. This is like a first time ever deal for us. I think we need to move away from the Fed for a bit. I am very much aware of that.
I 100% agree with that.
We talked about this off air.
I'm thinking maybe some Ring of Honor, New Japan. There's AWA, there's TNA, there's AEW, there's ECW, W's. There's so many options, Jay. I don't know how you're going to prepare for this.
Oh, I see. So what you're saying is you're not going to tell me right now. You're just going to send me a random text at 6 a.m. when you're getting ready for work and be like, you're booking this. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, pretty much. And probably like the day before we decide to record, just so I can be a giant dick to you right now.
No, that's totally fair. I'm not unaccustomed to that. So that's 100% fine. So I guess card subject to change, folks. We don't know what we're going to book next week, as Tyrone hasn't decided to tell me. It's kind of a swerve here, but we all know that Ty Russo is all about swerves, bro. So hence the Royal Rumble 2002 booking.
Ty Russo, Jesus fucking Christ! How have I never thought of that until you said it right now? Well done, sir. Well done.
Sure, 100%. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I guess it's going to be a big question mark. We're going to drop another episode of the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast coming up next week, next Monday.
That is correct. Next Monday, the new episode will drop. And until then, if you guys want to find us, you can find us on Twitter at good_enemies, on Instagram at good_enemies, and on Facebook at the Good Friends Better Enemies podcast. As always, we're available on YouTube at the Counted Out 7 channel. Like, subscribe. Hit subscribe, guys. You'll get this episode in your notifications every week when it happens. Plus, you'll get all their cool shit. Interviews, reviews, lists, every weird thing that those beautiful bitches do. And I'm pretty sure, Jay, you and I are going to be, or I guess by this point, will have been a part of their little WrestleMania Sunday show.
We most certainly will have been, and I'm looking forward to it. As I said, we're recording here on the Friday of WrestleMania, so it's WrestleMania Eve. It's like Christmas Eve, so we're excited about it. And so we're going to find out, you know what, I'll drop a little tweet on social media on Twitter when I find out whenever Tyrone decides to tell me what I'm rebooking next week. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this particular recap. We hope you enjoyed WrestleMania weekend. We hope you enjoy Monday Night Raw, the Raw after WrestleMania. And for myself and for Tyrone, Ty Russo, and for WrestleMania season, you've been listening to the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast.
Bye.